The planet Kalar 4 was a quiet world on the edge of known space. Its colors were mostly deep blues and purples with a sky that never got truly bright. 2 humans lived there in a small research outpost. The man was named Leo, a quiet man who studied alien life. The woman was named Maya, a practical woman who focused on keeping their systems running. Their outpost was a collection of rounded metal buildings, often covered in a faint purple moss that grew everywhere. It was a lonely job, but they were good at it. The Galactic Compact, the main government of known space, saw humans as useful but difficult. Other species saw humans as too emotional, too quick to form attachments. Because of this, humans were often given remote posts like this one, away from the important centers of power. Leo and Maya did not mind the quiet. They had each other for company and their work was interesting. But they always followed the rules, especially the big one. Do not interfere with native life, especially species the Compact considered important. One afternoon, Leo was checking sensor grids near the edge of the great spore forests. These forests were dense and strange, with trees that released glowing spores when touched. His scanner picked up a weak life sign, something small and fading. He called Maya. "I have a reading. It is not one of ours. It is. Hurt, I think." Maya's voice came back over the comm, cautious. "What is it? A native animal?" The scanner cannot get a clear read. The spore interference is too strong. "I am going to take a closer look." Leo moved carefully into the forest. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something sweet like rotting fruit. He found the source of the signal under the roots of a large, twisted tree. It was a creature, curled into a tight ball. It was like nothing he had seen before. It was about the size of a large dog, but it was clearly young. Its body was covered in smooth, black skin that seemed to absorb the light. One of its back legs was bent at a wrong angle, and a deep cut ran along its side. As Leo approached, it tried to lift its head and let out a low, pained sound, more of a vibration than a noise. Its eyes opened, and they were a bright, intelligent amber. They held Leo's gaze, and in them he saw not just pain, but a kind of fearful understanding. "I found it," Leo whispered into his comm. "It is a juvenile, a predator, I think. It is hurt badly." "Leo, do not touch it." Maya's voice was sharp with worry. "You know the protocols. We identify, we report, we do not interfere, especially with predator species. The Vorlax are very possessive about the fauna in this sector." Leo knew she was right. The Vorlax Dominion was a powerful and proud species. They claimed exclusive hunting rights to many worlds, including Kalar 4. They saw the great predators here as their personal property, tools for their noble hunts. To touch one was a serious crime in their eyes. But looking at the small, suffering creature, Leo could not just walk away. It was going to die here, alone. "I cannot leave it, Maya," he said, his voice soft but firm. "It will not survive the night." There was a long silence on the comm. Then Maya let out a slow breath. "Fine, but be careful, and we do this quietly. No reports. Not yet." Leo carefully gathered the small creature into his arms. It was surprisingly heavy and warm. It flinched at his touch but did not struggle, as if it knew he was trying to help. He carried it back to the outpost, its quiet, pained breaths a constant rhythm against his chest. Back inside, under the bright lights of the medbay, the creature looked even more alien and vulnerable. Maya helped him, her practical hands cleaning the wound and setting the broken leg. She was all business, but Leo saw the way her eyes softened when the creature whimpered. "It is a Kalathar hound," she confirmed, looking at the scanner results. "The database has a brief entry. Highly intelligent pack hunters prized by the Vorlax. We are breaking about a dozen compact regulations right now." "We are saving a life," Leo replied, gently stroking the creature's head. It leaned into his touch, a faint, warm vibration starting in its chest. A purr. Over the next few days, they cared for the cub. They fed it a nutrient paste and it slowly grew stronger. Its leg began to heal. It started to explore their small living area, its movements clumsy but curious. It was particularly fascinated by the heating vents curling up next to them to sleep. One evening, as Leo was reading, the cub climbed onto the couch next to him and laid its head in his lap. The smooth black skin of its back began to change. Faint, glowing patterns emerged, like embers stirring in a dark fire. They swirled and pulsed in a soft, orange-red light. "Look at that," Maya said, coming in from the control room. She stood and watched, her arms crossed, but she was smiling. "It is beautiful. It is happy," Leo said. He looked at the patterns. "We should call it Ember." Maya nodded. "Ember. It fits." From that moment, Ember was not just a patient. He was part of their small family. He followed Leo around the outpost, a quiet, dark shadow. He would play with Maya, chasing a light beam from her data pad, his amber eyes bright with a playful light. He learned their routines, their moods. He would nudge Leo's hand when he was working too long, and he would curl up at Maya's feet while she monitored the communications. They knew it was a risk. They knew they were breaking the law. But the bond that formed in that quiet outpost felt more real and more important than any distant galactic law. It was a simple thing. A man, a woman, and a young creature they had saved from death. They did not know that this simple bond would soon shake the foundations of the galaxy. They only knew that the outpost, once a place of lonely work, now felt like a home, and Ember, with his glowing patterns and quiet purr, was the heart of it. The galaxy beyond their small world did not care about their happiness. It had its own rules, and soon it would come knocking. The peace of Kalar 4 did not last. 3. Weeks after they found Ember, the proximity alarm blared through the quiet outpost. Maya was in the control room and her hands froze over the console. A ship was entering the atmosphere. It was not a scheduled supply run. This ship was big, and its signature was Vorlax. Leo came running in, Ember close at his heels. The young hound sensed the sudden tension. The warm ember-like patterns on his back faded, and his smooth skin became pure black again. He let out a low, questioning rumble. "It is a Vorlax hunter," Maya said, her voice tight. "A cruiser-class vessel. The Claw of Glory. They are hailing us." Leo's heart felt like a cold stone in his chest. He looked at Ember. "We have to hide him." But it was too late. The communication screen lit up, showing the face of the Vorlax commander. His name was Crix. His scales were a dull, metallic gray, and his eyes were black and unfeeling. He did not look like a person. He looked like a weapon. "Human outpost." Crix's voice was a harsh scrape of sound. "We have detected an energy signature from a Vorlax hunting asset. You are harboring stolen property. You will surrender it immediately." Maya tried to be calm. "Commander Crix, this is a research facility. We are under the protection of the Galactic Compact. We have no property of the Vorlax Dominion here." "Do not lie to me," Crix interrupted, his voice growing louder. "The psychic resonance of a Kalathar hound is unmistakable. You have one of our hounds. You will stand by for our arrival and its retrieval." The screen went dark. Leo grabbed Ember. "The storage locker in the back. It is shielded. Maybe it will hide his signal." He pushed the confused hound into the small, dark room. Stay quiet, boy." He closed the door, his heart aching. Soon they heard the heavy thump of a landing craft. A few minutes later, the main airlock door hissed open. Commander Crix stood there, flanked by 4 hulking Vorlax soldiers in heavy armor. They filled the small hallway, their presence making the air feel thick and dangerous. Crix walked in as if he owned the place. His eyes scanned the room with open disgust. "Where is it?" he demanded. "We do not have your hound," Leo said, standing his ground. Crix smiled, a cruel twisting of his lipless mouth. He held up a small device. It was beeping with a slow, steady rhythm. "This traces the bond frequency. The hound is here." He walked past them, following the beeps straight to the closed storage locker. He pulled the door open. Ember was inside, crouched low, his amber eyes wide with fear. He let out a defensive growl. Crix laughed. It was a horrible, grating sound. You see? You pathetic creatures? You thought you could hide it from me? He turned to look at Leo and Maya. You think your little game is clever? You have contaminated it. You have touched what is not yours. He was injured, Maya said, her voice shaking with anger. We saved his life. He would have died. That is of no concern to me, Crix said coldly. A tool that breaks is discarded. A hound that is weak is culled. That is the Vorlac's way. Your human sentiment is a sickness. He gestured to his soldiers. Take it. Put the control collar on it. 2 soldiers moved forward. Ember snarled and backed away, but the room was too small. One soldier fired a stun bolt that made Ember yelp in pain and confusion. The other soldier clamped a thick metal collar around his neck. A small red light on the collar began to blink. No, Leo shouted, stepping forward. A Vorlac soldier immediately raised his weapon, aiming it at Leo's chest. Crix looked at Leo with pure contempt. You feel something for this animal? This is why the Compact does not trust your species. You are ruled by fleeting emotions. You form bonds with things that are meant to be used. It is a weakness. He walked up to Leo, his large frame looming over him. The galaxy laughs at your bond, human. It is a joke. He turned and walked toward the airlock, his soldiers dragging a dazed and collared Ember behind them. Ember struggled, his claws scraping on the metal floor. He looked back at Leo and Maya and let out a high, terrified whine. It was a sound of pure betrayal. Leo felt a rage so hot it terrified him. He took another step, but Maya grabbed his arm, her grip like iron. Leo, no. They will kill you, she whispered, her face pale. They stood there, helpless, as the Vorlacs left their outpost. The airlock door closed with a final heavy thud. The sound of the landing craft taking off echoed through the quiet base. The silence that followed was the worst thing Leo had ever heard. It was empty. The outpost was just a collection of metal rooms again. The heart was gone. A short time later, their official communication channel activated. It was the Galactic Compact liaison, a Galian named Tev. His long, slender face looked apologetic. Researchers, Tev said, his voice soft. I have reviewed the report from Commander Crix. The Vorlac's Dominion's claim is valid under Compact law. The Kalethar Hound is a registered cultural asset. Your actions, while perhaps well-intentioned, were illegal. The matter is closed. Matter is closed? Leo said, his voice hollow. They took him. They mocked us for caring. Tev sighed. The emotional attachment is understood, but it is not a legal argument. The Vorlac's view of these creatures is different. To them it is property. We must respect the laws and cultures of all member species. I am sorry. There is nothing more to be done. The screen went blank. Maya sank into a chair. Leo stood staring at the closed airlock door. He could still see the fear in Ember's eyes. He could still hear Crix's laughter. The galaxy had not just taken the cub. It had spit on the very thing that made them human. It had called their love a weakness. And in that moment, Leo knew the matter was not closed. It was only just beginning. The outpost on Kalar 4 became a tomb of silence. The constant, gentle hum of the life support systems now sounded like a lonely moan. Leo moved through the rooms like a ghost. He would stop and stare at the spot where Ember used to sleep, or at the heating vent where the young hound would curl up. The faint, glowing patterns of Ember's contentment were just a memory now, replaced by the cold, gray reality of his absence. Maya tried to keep things normal. She ran system checks and filed routine reports, but her hands were often still, her eyes distant, fixed on the star chart on the main screen. She was not thinking about regulations anymore. She was thinking about the look on the Vorlac's commander's face, the sheer arrogance, the way he laughed at them. A cold knot of anger had formed in her stomach, and it would not go away. Leo spent his days in the communications room. He sent messages to the human diplomatic corps. He explained the situation. He used careful official words like unlawful seizure and cultural misunderstanding. He attached the log showing they had saved Ember's life. The replies were always the same. They were sympathetic but firm. The Vorlac's Dominion was a major power. The Kalethar Hounds were legally their property. A formal complaint had been lodged, but it would take time. They advised patience. They told Leo and Maya not to do anything rash. One evening, Leo read the latest message aloud to Maya. It was from a junior diplomat. While we understand your emotional distress, direct action is not advised. The political situation is delicate. Leo threw his datapad onto the table. The sound echoed in the quiet room. Emotional distress, he said, his voice low and tight. They took our family. They are going to kill him for sport, and they call it emotional distress. Maya did not look up from her own screen. She had pulled up the public Vorlax news feeds. They are calling it the Grand Hunt, she said, her voice flat. It is a ceremony for their young nobles. It is happening in 2 weeks. In the home system. On the screen was a promotional video. It showed Vorlax nobles on sleek hover skiffs chasing large, powerful-looking hounds through a giant artificial canyon. The hounds were collared just like Ember. The video was set to dramatic pounding music. It was a celebration. The final shot showed a young Vorlax standing triumphantly over a subdued hound. The galaxy was not just allowing this. Some parts of it were watching for entertainment. Leo looked at the video and then he looked at Maya. The quiet sadness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a hard, clear light. We are not going to wait for the diplomats, he said. Maya finally looked up from the screen. She met his gaze. She had been waiting for him to say this. No, she agreed. We are not. This was no longer about rules or laws. It was about something simpler. Someone had taken one of their own. They were going to get him back. The decision was made in that single moment without another word. The plan began to form. They had a ship. It was not a warship. It was an old, decommissioned courier vessel called the Stubborn Hope. It was small, slow, and painted a dull, rusty red. They used it for occasional supply runs to the nearest trading post. But it had a jump drive, and it was theirs. For the next 10 days, the outpost was a flurry of quiet, focused activity. The sadness was burned away by purpose. Maya worked on the ship. She bypassed safety limiters on the engine to squeeze out a little more speed. She installed a powerful communication scanner, not to listen, but to jam signals. She found an old, decommissioned mining pulse generator in a storage crate. It was meant to break apart small asteroids. With some rewiring, she thought it could be used to disable the control collars from a distance. Leo studied everything he could find about the Vorlax home system and the Grand Hunt. He learned the layout of the ceremonial canyon. He found the public broadcast frequencies they used. He planned a quiet approach vector, a way to slip into the system unnoticed. He packed supplies, medical kits, and the tough leather gloves Ember liked to play tug-of-war with. They did not talk much. They did not need to. Every action, every repaired circuit and packed supply was a silent promise. They were coming. The night before they left, they stood in the hangar bay looking at the Stubborn Hope. It looked small and fragile against the vastness of space. Do you think we are crazy? Leo asked, his voice quiet. Maya put a hand on the ship's cold hull. Maybe, she said. But it is the right kind of crazy. We are not soldiers. We are not diplomats. We are just two people who are going to get their dog back. Leo nodded. That was it. That was the entire reason. It was simple. The next morning, they sealed the outpost. They did not file a flight plan. They did not tell anyone where they were going. They sat in the cockpit of the Stubborn Hope. Maya powered up the engines. The ship hummed to life around them. Ready? She asked. Ready, Leo said. The hangar bay doors opened, revealing the star-dusted blackness of space. Maya pushed the controls forward. The Stubborn Hope lifted off, left the silent, empty outpost behind, and shot up towards the stars. They were not important people. They were not powerful. They were just two humans in a small old ship, going to the heart of a mighty empire. They were not going to ask nicely this time. They were going to show the galaxy what happened when you laughed at a human's bond. The silence was over. Now it was time for the storm. The journey through the jump was a long, tense silence. The Stubborn Hope rattled and groaned as it traveled through the unnatural space between stars. Leo and Maya did not speak much. They checked their systems again and again. They reviewed the plan, knowing it was a fragile thing, likely to shatter at the first contact with reality. They were not soldiers. They were two scientists in an old ship, heading into the heart of a warrior empire. Finally, the ship shuddered as it dropped out of the jump. The view screen cleared, and the Vorlax home system appeared. It was a busy place filled with the blinking lights of large warships and bustling freighters. At the center of it all was a massive, ring-shaped space station, and below that the harsh red surface of the Vorlax homeworld. And there it is, Maya whispered. her hands tight on the controls. She guided the stubborn Hope carefully, keeping them hidden in the shadow of a large asteroid. They were just another piece of space junk, unnoticed in the busy traffic. On the scanner, they found what they were looking for: a giant artificial canyon carved into the planet's surface. The grand hunt was already beginning. A public broadcast feed flickered onto their secondary screen. The image was sharp and clear. A commentator was speaking in the guttural Vorlax language, subtitles automatically translating below. And now the young nobles begin their trial. Watch as they test their skill against the fierce Kalathar hounds. The camera swept across the canyon. It was enormous, with high, sheer walls and a dusty floor. Several Vorlax on hoverskiffs were chasing a group of the large hounds. The hounds wore the same blinking control collars that Crix had put on Ember. The collars would likely deliver a painful shock if a hound did not run or if it tried to fight back. It was a controlled, cruel game. Then the camera focused on a smaller group. One hound was separated from the others, being harried by a single skiff. The hound was smaller, its movements more frantic. It was Ember. Leo's breath caught in his throat. Ember was trying to dodge the skiff, his head low, his body tense. The Vorlax noble on the skiff laughed, firing a low-energy bolt near Ember's feet to make him jump. The galaxy was watching this. Some were probably cheering. "That's him," Leo said, his voice rough. Maya's jaw was clenched. "Okay, get ready, we only get one shot at this." She pushed the control yoke forward. The stubborn Hope dropped out of the asteroid shadow and dove towards the planet. It was a reckless, fast descent. Alarms blared on, their console as Vorlax traffic control tried to hail them. Maya ignored them. "Now, Leo," she shouted. Leo pressed a sequence of buttons. The modified mining pulse generator hummed, building up power. It was not a weapon. It was a focused wave of electromagnetic energy designed to short-circuit electronics. He aimed it at the canyon below and activated it. A silent, invisible wave of energy washed over the hunting grounds. On their screen, they saw the effect immediately. The lights on all the control collars flickered and went dark. The hover skiffs stuttered, their engines coughing as the pulse disrupted their systems. The Vorlax nobles shouted in confusion as their skiffs wobbled and lost altitude. Down in the canyon, Ember stumbled to a halt. The constant, low-level pain from the collar was gone. The pressure in his mind that forced him to run was suddenly silent. He stood still, confused. He looked around, his amber eyes wide. Then he looked up. He saw the familiar, rusty shape of the stubborn Hope hovering at the edge of the canyon. He saw his humans. He sensed them. The fear and confusion in his eyes vanished, replaced by a deep, primal understanding. They had come for him. The ones who had saved him, who had fed him, who had shown him kindness. They were here. A change came over Ember. He was no longer a scared cub. He was a Kalathar hound, a predator from a deadly world. He was no longer prey. He lowered his head, his sleek body coiling like a spring. A deep, rumbling growl started in his chest, a sound so full of rage it seemed to vibrate through the very air. He unleashed a psychic shriek. It was not a sound that could be heard, but every being in the canyon and every viewer watching the broadcast felt it. It was a wave of pure, focused fury. It was the rage of being captured, collared, and hunted. It was the joy of being free, and the fierce, protective love for the two humans in the old ship. The Vorlax noble on the nearest skiff clutched his head, crying out in pain and surprise. His skiff, already unstable, wobbled wildly and crashed into the canyon wall. Ember moved. He was a black blur, faster than he had ever been before. He leaped onto another skiff, his claws digging into the metal. The Vorlax noble tried to fight back, but Ember was a whirlwind of teeth and rage. He was not trying to kill. He was dismantling. He shattered the controls and sent the noble tumbling to the ground. The stubborn Hope flew lower. Maya expertly weaved through the chaos. Leo used the ship's utility grapplers, the kind used for moving cargo crates to swipe at the remaining skiffs, knocking them off course. They were a nuisance, a disruption. They were the storm they had promised. The galactic broadcast was still live. The camera, shaking, stayed focused on Ember. It showed the small, black hound, now the master of the canyon, standing over a cowering Vorlax noble. It showed the old, battered human ship flying defiantly overhead. The commentary had stopped. There was only stunned silence from the broadcast booth. The galaxy was watching, but no one was laughing anymore. They were witnessing something they did not understand. They were seeing the strength of a bond they had called a weakness. They were seeing the rage of a gentle species that had been pushed too far. The hunter cub had been unleashed, and with him the full, terrifying force of humanity's love. The canyon was in chaos. The hover skiffs were down. The Vorlax nobles were scattered and confused. Ember stood panting in the center of it all, his chest heaving, his amber eyes fixed on the stubborn hope. The immediate fight was over, but they were not safe. They were in the heart of the Vorlax home system. Soon soldiers would come and real warships would arrive. Maya guided the ship low over the canyon floor, kicking up clouds of red dust. She brought it to a hover near Ember. The cargo bay door hissed open. Leo stood in the doorway, the wind whipping at his clothes. "Ember," he yelled. The hound's head snapped up. He saw Leo. In an instant, the fierce hunter was gone, replaced by the joyful cub. He bounded towards the ship, a black streak of pure speed. He leaped into the cargo bay, his body wriggling with excitement. He pushed his head against Leo's chest, a deep, rumbling purr vibrating through both of them. The faint ember-like patterns glowed brightly on his back, shining with happiness. Leo wrapped his arms around him. "It's okay, boy. We've got you." He quickly checked the dead collar and, finding a latch, snapped it open and threw it to the floor. It was just a piece of metal now. But they were not done. Leo looked at Maya in the cockpit. She pointed towards the top of the canyon wall where a complex of buildings stood, the broadcast control center. It was their only chance to be heard. "Get us up there," Leo said. Maya pushed the engines. The stubborn hope rose quickly, flying straight towards the control complex. Vorlax guards were scrambling outside, raising their weapons. Maya did not fire back. She used the ship's grapplers to knock over communication dishes and sweep the guards off their feet. It was not an attack to kill, but to create a path. She set the ship down hard on the landing pad right outside the main building. "Go," she shouted to Leo. "I'll keep the systems hot." Leo looked at Ember. "Stay. Guard." Ember understood. He planted himself in the cargo bay doorway, his body tense, a low growl rumbling in his throat protecting the ship. Leo ran. He burst through the doors of the control center. Inside, a few terrified Vorlax technicians were hiding under consoles. The main broadcast screen was still active, showing the chaotic scene in the canyon. The entire galaxy was still watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Leo walked up to the main console. He saw the button for the system-wide broadcast. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He pressed it. A small light turned from red to green. He was live. He looked directly into the camera. His face was smudged with dust, his clothes were messy, but his eyes were clear and steady. "People of the Galactic Compact," he began, his voice calm but firm. "You just watched the grand hunt. You saw a creature you call an animal. You saw him hunted for sport." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But you also saw something else. You saw him fight back. You saw him become free." He gestured towards the screen behind him, which still showed the canyon. "You laughed at our bond. You called it a weakness. Your laws called it a crime. The Vorlax commander told us our sentiment was a sickness." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. "But this weakness is what gave Ember the strength to survive when he was left for dead. It is what gave us the courage to come here, to the most powerful empire in this sector, to get him back. You mistake our capacity for love as an absence of strength. You are wrong. It is our greatest strength." He looked over at the cargo bay of his ship where Ember stood guard, loyal and fierce. "This is not a declaration of war. This is a statement of fact. Humanity will no longer stand by while the things we love are threatened. We will no longer be silent when our bonds are mocked. Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Remember what you saw here today." He reached out and pressed the button again. The broadcast light went out. He had said what he came to say. He turned and ran back to the ship. The Vorlax guards were starting to regroup, but the sight of Ember snarling in the doorway made them hesitate. Leo jumped into the cargo bay. "Go, Maya, now!" The bay door slammed shut. The engines roared. The stubborn Hope lifted off the platform, turning sharply towards open space. On the sensors, they could see Vorlax warships powering up, moving to intercept them. But then something strange happened. Another ship, a Gelian freighter, moved from its lane and positioned itself between the stubborn Hope and the nearest Vorlax warship. It was not an attack. It was a shield. Then another ship, a small Tarkonian scout vessel, did the same. Then another. Across the galaxy, others had watched the broadcast. Some were moved. Some were shamed. Others were simply calculating the new balance of power. They had seen a new force in the galaxy, a species whose love made them unstoppable. Blocking the Vorlax now was a small price to pay to earn their future goodwill. The path was not clear, but it was open. Maya pushed the engines to their limit. The stubborn Hope shot through the confusion of ships, past the ringed space station and out into the dark open space beyond the system. The jump drive whined as it charged. Leo sank to the floor of the cargo bay, exhausted. Ember came over and laid his head in Leo's lap, his purr a soft, steady vibration. The glowing patterns on his back were bright and calm. Maya looked back from the cockpit, a tired but real smile on her face. They were together. They were safe. They had not started a war. They had taught the galaxy a new, unforgettable law. They had shown that humanity's rage was not born from hate, but from a love so deep and so fierce that it would tear down empires to protect what was theirs. And as the stubborn Hope jumped into the safety of the void, the galaxy was left to think about what it had learned. No one was laughing anymore.